All right, so today we're going to be diving into Anthony Mercadante's career, and we've got his resume right here in front of us, and wow, this is not your average resume, that's for sure.
Yeah, you're telling me, just skimming through it, it's clear that he's worked with some really big names, right? We're talking NBA, Nike, Turner Broadcasting, like,
It's a pretty impressive lineup,
yeah.
and those are just some of the big ones.
Right, exactly. And that's what makes this duck dive so interesting, right? It's not just about the name recognition, it's about understanding the kind of work he's done and the impact he's had at those companies. So we're going beyond the bullet points to really dig into his expertise in brand strategy and protection.
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, it says here that he's passionate about global brand strategy, brand innovation, intellectual property, brand protection, and brand assurance. Phew, that's quite a mouthful.
It really speaks to, like you were saying, it's not just about knowing the legal side of things. It's about understanding how all of those pieces fit together to create a strong global brand.
Well, and he's got the experience to back it up. For example, he led the implementation of brand standards procedures at Universal Orlando, which, by the way, then expanded globally. Can you imagine just like the logistics of creating a consistent brand experience across something as massive as Universal?
Absolutely. That's a huge undertaking. And it really shows his leadership skills, to get buy-in from all those different stakeholders and to make sure everyone's on the same page. That's impressive.
And speaking of global, it's not just that he's worked with big brands, he's actually helped to shape them on an international level. So at Nike, for example, he managed the transition of their global trademark portfolio, which, when you think about it, means he was responsible for protecting some of the most recognizable trademarks in the world.
Absolutely. And that's no small feat. You're dealing with different laws and regulations in every country, not to mention the cultural nuances and the potential for like counterfeiting and things like that.
It's interesting, though, because he also mentions assisting the marketing team at Nike with developing promotional material. So it's not just about the legal side of things, right? He's also got an eye for the creative side of branding.
Exactly. And that's a really valuable skill set to have, to be able to bridge that gap between the legal and the creative. It tells me he understands how those two departments need to work together to build a successful brand.
So we're already seeing a pattern here. Global experience, a focus on both protecting and building brands, and a proven track record of success with some of the biggest names in the game.
For sure. And let's not forget, it's not just about the companies he's worked for, but also the trajectory of his career. Like at the NBA, he was promoted twice, eventually becoming the director of intellectual property and brand protection.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What does his time at the NBA tell us about his leadership style and his ability to handle these high-stakes projects?
Well, I think the NBA is a perfect example of, how he can really thrive in these high pressure situations because you're not just managing a team there, you're talking about protecting the intellectual property of a global sports league.
Right, like we're talking trademarks, copyrights, everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the stakes are high, right? You mess up and it could cost the league millions of dollars, not to mention damage to their reputation.
And, he was dealing with everything from people trying to sell fake merchandise to unauthorized use of team logos and stuff like that,
For sure, and on a global scale. So it's not like he could just focus on what was happening here in the US. He had to have his finger on the pulse of what was going on all over the world.
which probably meant working with a lot of different people too, right? Like
Right.
lawyers in different countries, investigators, who knows who else.
Absolutely. And that's another thing that really stands out to me about his resume. It's clear that he's not afraid to collaborate and build relationships with people from all different backgrounds. He even mentions working with international investigators and negotiating with third-party counsel.
And let's not forget, on top of all of that, he was still managing his own team at the NBA.
Right. And not only managing, but mentoring them too. He actually mentions that he's trained and mentored over 8 team members, many of whom have gone on to like bigger and better things in their careers.
Which is really saying something because it shows that he's invested in the success of the people around him.
Yeah.
He's not just trying to climb the ladder himself, he's trying to bring others up with him.
Exactly. And that kind of leadership is so important, especially in a field like brand management, where it's all about teamwork and collaboration. So you've got these impressive technical skills, which we've talked about, but then you layer on top of that those leadership qualities and his ability to create a positive work environment, and you can see why he's been so successful.
Yeah, it's clear that he's got the whole package,
Mhm.
the skills, the experience, the leadership qualities. And then on top of all of that, just from reading his resume, it seems like he's just a genuinely good guy, which isn't always the case with people at this level.
Right. It's refreshing to see. Like, he's obviously driven and ambitious, but he also seems like someone who values work-life balance and having life outside of work, which is so important.
Yeah, and you can see that in his list of interests too, right? He's got his family, fishing, exploring Florida, trying new foods, even mentions playing with my dog.
I love that. It
Yeah,
just shows that he's a well-rounded person with a variety of interests, and that's the kind of person you want to work with, right? Someone who's not just a one-trick pony.
totally. So as we start to wrap things up here, what are some of the key takeaways you're hoping our listeners walking away with? So for anybody out there who might be thinking about bringing Anthony on board for a project, maybe they need someone with his expertise. What's the one thing you hope they take away from this deep dive?
Well, I think the big thing is realizing that Anthony's expertise isn't just about like knowing the law or understanding brand guidelines, although he clearly excels at that. It's really his strategic thinking that stands out to me. He
Yeah.
can see the bigger picture and how all the pieces fit together.
But he's not afraid to roll up his sleeves and get his hands dirty either.
Exactly. He's got that rare combination of being a big picture thinker and a detail-oriented doer. And to me, that's incredibly valuable, especially in the world of brand management, where things are constantly changing and evolving.
And it's not just about the work itself, is it? I mean, we've talked a lot about his technical skills and his experience, but just as important, maybe even more so, are the things like his leadership qualities
Yeah.
and his ability to build a strong team. And, those things don't always show up on a resume.
Right. But you can see it in the way he talks about mentoring his team members and his emphasis on creating a positive work environment. Those are the marks of a truly effective leader.
Yeah. And when you put all that together, I mean, the experience, the skills, the leadership, it's no wonder he's been so successful at places like the NBA and Nike.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder what he'll tackle next.
For sure. Well, listeners, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the career of Anthony Mercadante. We've seen how his passion for brand excellence, combined with his strategic thinking and leadership skills, has led to an impressive career trajectory, working with some of the biggest names in the business. We hope you found this deep dive informative and perhaps even inspiring. Until next time, remember to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.